Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I bring you another Dragon Knight build, but one is a lot different. It's got a lot more oomph to it. Let me just put it that way. Today I bring you guys the updated version of the Dragons Rage Barbarian. Now, there is a little bit of background behind this build, and I want to give it to you guys before I share it with you and why it came to be. So, if you guys didn't know, a couple years back we had this year-long event called the Rage of Dragons. And the idea of this build really came from this Rage of Dragons are tearing across elsewhere, and I wanted to make a build that kind of represented that. But it's a build that plays against that stuff. So it's a build that plays against the Rage of Dragons. So I made the Dragons Rage Barbarian to do that. And basically what it is they use their anger and rage to fight against the dragons using dragon type powers. So you can guess what the class is. That's right, it is a Dragon Knight. So the Dragons Rage Barbarian is a Khajiit Dragon Knight. Doesn't have to be Khajiit, any race can be this. It's just I chose Khajiit because of the theme, because of the idea behind it. So kind of give it that personification. So as you can see, 64 points in the stamina. This gives us 20k max magic, a 29k max health, 29k stamina with an 889 mag recovery, 692 health recovery, and a 1026 stamina recovery. Our spell damage is coming in at 3109, weapon damage 3492, and as you can see, there's not a big difference between the two, and I like this. I like this because it allows this build to be more flexible. It doesn't mean that all the time you have to be DPS. You can actually switch roles to tank, to even a healer build, and it works really well. It's not like uber fantastic, but it works really well, and I like it for that. So really good recoveries, as you can see. Weapon spell damage pretty decent. The spell and weapon crit a little on the low side, but that can be adjusted in group play or just by maybe even switching out one of the weapons to a dagger or something like that if you want to do that. But I really feel like 38% is more than enough for this build to crit enough. It does enough critting. So really good for that. As you can see, 19,000 spell, 18,000 physical. It's really tanky, really survivable. It makes for a really good DPS, but it also makes for a really good upfront DPS that just doesn't move. They can stand and dish damage, and it works really well. Even against dragons themselves. I have soloed a dragon with this build many times, and yes, it can solo a dragon. It is very cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of it. We are running Thief Mudstone. We do have Major Prophecy and Savagery, just like the Fire Dancer did. And of course, we also have the Tri-Stat Food. Tri-Stat Food is hands down the best food for this build. Any other food, and it kind of tapers off, but you can use other food for other roles. So going over here and taking a look at our food sources. Our primary food we're going to be using most of the time is the longfin pasty and melon sauce, unless we're tanking or unless we're just doing a dungeon or a trial or something and you can afford them. Then the Bewitched Sugar Skulls, or you can craft it yourself, is even better because of the health recovery. This makes this build almost unstoppable. It's crazy. And I'll go ahead and just show you real quick what it looks like with the skulls going. So it actually goes up a little bit in stats, as you can see here, a little bit more max magicka, and then it gets 1,172 health recovery. And then if you have a potion going, like a tripod or something, it goes up to 1,500 health recovery, 1,146 mag recovery, and 1,283 stam recovery. This thing is a powerhouse in PvE and in PvP. But you got to remember, this build is more powerful in PvE, because PvP you're going to lose a lot of things, like depending on what you're playing in, you're going to lose CP bonuses, so you're going to lose some of that recovery, you're going to lose some of that other stuff, and not by a huge margin, but it does show a difference. All right. So let me go back to the normal food that this build runs. All right. So for the types of play that you'd be playing, this is all around the best food you can use. Longfin pasty and melon sauce, really good all-around food to use. If you're playing more stamina DPS, you can use the Dubious Cameron Throne. If you're playing more of a healer type, I would suggest Witchmother's Potent Brew. Again, a healer type, Spellcaster Pots, Stamina DPS, Gold Warrior, regular play, try potions. I mean, all around it works really well. So I like this setup. So going over gear sets. The gear sets that I've chosen for this build really fit the build, really fit the theme, and just really add to its overall destructiveness. So looking at the first set, we have Veladrits. Adds weapon and spell damage on the 1-piece, 2-piece. When you deal damage, you have a 20% chance to spawn 3 disease spores in front of you after 1 second and deal 5,610 disease damage to any enemy hit. This effect can occur once every 8 seconds, then scales off the higher of your weapon or spell damage, and it can critically strike now, so that's another bonus. This build does crit strike at 128%, but it only gets the 125% total. Next up, we have Briarheart, and this is I'm not even going to say it, it's just a great overall set. One, it increases, the 2-piece and 4-piece give you extra crit, the 3-piece adds max damage, the 5-piece, when you deal critical damage, you increase your weapon and spell damage by 450 for 10 seconds. This effect is active. Your critical strikes heal you for 239 health. This effect can occur once every 15 seconds, and the heal scales off your highest max magicka or stamina. So the nice thing about this is it really plays into that theme of like, hey, I'm a barbarian, I'm raging, I'm in a fight, and the more damage I do, the stronger I get, you know, the more I rage kind of thing. It really plays into that, and I really like that element to this build. The next one we're using is the Hatchling Shell. Now this isn't required, it just makes the build that much better because it adds 2 things, armor on the 2 and 3-piece, 4-piece adds more health, and then the 5-piece, whenever you take damage, you gain a damage shield that absorbs 5,849 damage for 6 seconds. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds, and it scales off your max health. The nice thing is that if you're in a group, it goes to about 6k roughish if you have a warden in the group. So you get about a 6k damage shield every 6 seconds whenever you take damage, and it doesn't matter the damage type, you're going to get this 6k shield, and it's going to be up pretty much non-stop. It's going to pop every 6 seconds. Alright, so that's pretty much that. Let's go over traits and enchants on the armor. So like many of my builds, the monster helm is heavy because we are using 5-piece medium armor set. So the heavy is going to be reinforced with a tri-stat. This is going to give you greater survivability with your resistances. It's also going to give you just that much more survivability. And then it has the tri-stat to give you a mix of stats. And that's so you can flex into other roles if you need to, in whatever situation you might be in. Like if your group really needs a healer, but you already have a tank and you have 2 DPS, and they're looking for a healer, you could just change your spec at the armory table. Sorry about this. About clearing my throat. But you can change your spec at the armory table, and it makes it a lot easier to do without having to change all your gear out and all this stuff. You can just change your build over to a healer type build and still retain all the benefits this set has to offer. And it really plays good as a healer. It's a really aggressive healer, which is really fun. On the chest and legs, we are running invigorating traits. This is just to give us more of that recovery factor, and then of course we're running tri-stats on them as well to give us those more stats. And then on the smaller pieces, and this is going to be unusual for a lot of people, we are running 4 divines, but we're running 4 max health enchants. And the reason for that is Khajiits already get extra stamina and magicka and health, and so adding that extra health pool to them makes them just more tankier, so they can stay on the front lines, fight longer, take more damage because of their higher resistances and everything else. They just play, it plays really powerfully. It's incredibly powerful build. So the divines and the max health really help with this. Now, if you wanted to, you could go all stamina here if you wanted to. That's really up to the player playing the build, but I like the max health for the survivability. Moving on to the rings, we are running 2 trirunes as usual with 2 weapon damage. This is going to give you that greater resource pools with having the ability to have that higher weapon damage for your own physical damage output. And then last but not least, our necklace is infused with a multi-enchant or prismatic enchant recovery. And this gives you all 3 recovery types, and the infused enhances that to a more powerful effect. Sorry about having to clear my throat so much. Yes, I am drinking. So, moving on to the weapons, we are running 2 axes. Now, axes do give you increased crit chance, or crit damage and critical healing. Why? And that's why this build works so well, is because that critical healing effect even applies to the crit heal from Briarheart, and it makes it even more powerful. Being a Khajiit, you get increased critical damage and critical healing, so it that's how you can reach that 128% critical damage, but you only get 125% of it in total. So you get max crit capabilities. So the 2 axes we're running an infused enhancement, prismatic enhancement. This gives you magic damage, and it restores health, magicka, and stamina when you deal damage, and that's going to happen every 3 seconds on the front bar. So you're going to get both resources coming back, plus your health is going to be coming back. It's pretty crazy because even the enchants can crit now, so it's really good. Next up, we have our offhand, which is a Nirnhond, which deals oblivion damage, and as you can see, it deals 2,437 oblivion damage whenever you hit with this. And it doesn't matter if the enemy has a damage shield or any kind of damage mitigation, they will still take the damage. So this is more for like some of those dungeon or trial encounters where you face enemies who do pop shields, and those shields can be now mitigated through with this extra damage. It's not a lot, but it does pay off in the long run when you're running a rotation and you're really focusing on that boss. So alright, next up, back bar. We're running a bow infused with weapon damage enchant. That's a given, but with all the weapon and spell damage that you can get on this build, you end up with about 7,000 weapon damage and 6,400 spell damage. It is really crazy how much you can get out of this build if you put a lot into it. Alright, now that you guys have seen that, let's go ahead and talk about skills. Now, before I get into the skills on the bar, I am going to say this. If you're playing any one of my builds are meant to use a lot of different skills. They're not just meant to use what's on the bar. What's on the bar is recommended. All the other skills that you have access to in the class, in your weapons, in your armor, guild, alliance war, are all things that you can use. And it doesn't really matter which morphs you pick or whatever. Everyone has their preferences, but I would say with this build, take all the stamina morphs and magic morphs you can get, because either way you play, if you're playing a damage dealer, or you're playing a healer, or you're playing a tank, you're gonna need all those different resources to make the build really, really functional. Alright, so now moving on to the skills we have on our bar. Starting with the first skill, we have Venomous Claw. This is by far one of the best dots that a Dragon Knight has, and it's not your spammable. So you're going to activate this, you're going to let it run its course, because the longer it runs its course, it will deal 20% more damage. So it deals damage up front, it deals damage over 14 seconds, and then it deals additional damage or increased damage after dealing damage every 2 seconds. So it'll increase by 20% each every 2 seconds. So every other tick. Next up is our spammable. Now, a lot of people are going to say that's an expensive spammable, but it works out really well with this build, with the way it functions. This is an AoE build. This isn't one that you take into a dungeon to clear a single target. You go into a dungeon, you're there to clear trash. You're there to just rip everything apart. So this skill plays really well into it, and that is Steel Tornado. And basically you deal an AoE damage around you of, it says 5,222, but it's actually can get a lot higher, and it damages all nearby enemies in a 360-degree radius around you. So all enemies around you will take damage. Next up, we have Noxious Breath. Now, this is a great skill in itself. One, it deals damage up front, it deals damage over 14 seconds, and it applies Major Breach for 14 seconds. This is one of the longest breach effects in the game, and this is what makes it so powerful outside of the puncture ability. It is incredibly powerful skill, and it's great for wardens, or not wardens, but Dragon Knights. Especially stamina Dragon Knights, because you're going to be up close anyways. Breaking that armor, reducing their resistance is going to help your group in a lot of ways, and you can do this in a really unique way, which a lot of people don't realize they can do. I'm going to show you. I think I got the Skelly set up in the back over here, but I'm just going to show you. And I said I think, I don't remember. Yes, so if you hit like a quarter group of enemies like this with the Noxious Breath, it will apply Noxious Breath to all of them. So it's a big coverage area. It's not a cone. It's literally almost a cube in front of you. And it makes it for a very powerful effect on it. So let's go ahead and back into the skills. So Noxious Breath, really good. Next up, we have Deadly Cloak. This gives you major evasion, reducing damage taken from area of effects by 20%, but then it deals damage every 2 seconds. And this is going to help keeping enchants applied, proccing that damage from the Oblivion is going to be really good, but also proccing that enchant that gives you resources back is going to be even better. So really good for that. And next, we have Flames of Oblivion. Now this gives you Major Prophecy and Savagery now, no matter what, on either morph version. So it's really good. It casts 3 fireballs every 5 seconds, dealing 6k damage, and it scales off your highest offensive stat now, so it's not just magic or stamina, but crit does play into it now. So having both high spell and weapon crit plays well into this. Next up, we have the Standard of Might, which is also a great skill. One, it deals damage over 20 seconds. It applies Major Defile to the enemy, reducing healing received and health recovery. Standing in the area reduces or increases your damage by 15% and reduces the damage you take by 15%. And then, of course, it's a synergy. On the back bar, first ability we have is Venom Arrow. Now, a lot of people don't like Venom Arrow as much as they like Poison Injection. I like Venom Arrow because it does deal almost the same exact damage together. But this one will deal damage up front, damage over 10 seconds, and then any enemies hit that are casting an ability, whether it's a stamina ability or a magic ability, both PvE, PvP, it doesn't matter, you will interrupt them, send them off balance, and stun them for 3 seconds. This is amazing in dungeons, especially when you have ranged casters in certain boss encounters. You can interrupt those enemies from casting their spells. You can set them off balance and then do more damage to them. It's really crazy. And last but not least, for the bow, we do have Arrow Barrage. Now, Arrow Barrage is a larger radius than Endless Hail, so it gives you more area of coverage. It does do damage every second for 8 seconds after a 2-second delay. It's a very powerful skill. Don't ignore it. And it's going to help you keep your weapon spell damage applied more efficiently. Alright, moving on. Next up, we have Eruption. Another great ability. It deals flame damage immediately and flame damage over 18 seconds. It also reduces movement speed by 70%. For dungeon play, this is a godsend. This is one of the best control skills in the game because it has an 18-second timer on it. So when you set this down in a dungeon, you have a horde of mobs coming towards you, or a raid, and you have a big group of mobs, set this down, just drop it. And they'll hit it and start slowing down big time. This helps your group so much in so many ways. it's a great skill for that. But it's also a great skill for damage and damage over time, because the eruption effect, the eruption damage, which is the initial target damage of the 4,244, will go off again. It'll hit twice if you leave it alone for the total duration of 18 seconds. Alright, moving on to our next ability, and this is kind of our, oh no, we're gonna die, Green Dragon's Blood, but it's also really good for the build. So what you do is you draw a compound Draconic Blood to heal for 33% of your missing health. This can heal for a lot. And then you also gain major fortitude, major endurance, and minor vitality, increasing your health recovery, stamina recovery, and healing received by 8% for 20 seconds. Now, why is it important to have those higher recovery rates? With those higher recovery rates, you can stay in the fight more efficiently. So it allows you to just stay in the fight more efficiently, pretty much. But that healing received, also it gets affected by your enchant that you have on your weapon that heals you, and the Briarheart that heals you. Those things play into that 8% healing received, and it boosts them up, and it makes them more effective for you in the long run. Next up, we have Flames of Oblivion. One of the skills you want to have on both bars, because it gives you that major prophecy and savagery on both bars. So it gives you that higher crit for both spell and physical damage, and then of course this is where you're going to be activating it from most of the time, and reactivating it on rotation. Now the next skill, people are going to say, you're a DPS, why are you running Warhorn? Well, that's why. It's kind of the thematic theme of this build. You got to remember, when you go into a rage, what do? You roar, you scream out, you get aggressive, and when you do that, it boosts the morale of your allies around you, because they get kind of that courage. You're empowering their courage to fight. But you also get that minor force or major force, increasing critical damage by 20% for 10 seconds. But you also boost the max magicka and stamina of your group by 10% for 30 seconds. And this really helps in those boss encounters where there's just a gap or a window where you can do damage really good. You save it for that moment and fire this off, and this will help your group in those sections of the fight where you can actually just burst damage, and this is where you're going to use this skill mostly. Majority of the time you will be doing Standard of Might, but the Warhorn's there for that purpose if you need it. Alright, so now that I've talked about those skills, there's a lot of class skills that you can use for different things, such as Hardened Armored for tanking. Taking Flight is a great skill for, just AoE knockback stunning kind of thing. You have Choking Talons on the Ardent Flame. You also have the Molten Whip, which is a great skill for, as a spammable damage skill if you want to use it. You have Empowering Change, which is really good. Basically, you launch a chain and it'll pull you to the target, and it just helps you get around the battlefield more efficiently. Back to the dragonic powers, we have Protective Plate. It's a really good one if you're like tanking and you're taking a lot of range damage. This is a really good one for that. Deep Breath is a really good heal AoE kind of thing. And then with Earthen Heart, you have the Stone Giant, which is another really good spammable. I wouldn't say it's a great spammable, but it's a good one. You have the Igneous Shield for when you're tanking. You also have Shattering Rocks for, just locking enemies up and making sure they can't do anything. And then when the effect ends, it explodes and they take, deal damage to other things. And then you're healed for a certain amount. It's really cool. Eruption, which you already know about. And then weapon skills, we are using dual wield and bow, so you do have access to all the dual wield and bow skills, along with the medium armor skill Shuffle. You have soul magic skills, you have the guild skills, the Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, Psijic Order, and Undaunted. And of course the Alliance War skills that work in PvE. If you want to go full on PvP, unlock them all. I would suggest it. It can be greatly useful. And then Khajiit skill racials themselves, they get robustness. This increases health recovery, stamina, and mag recovery, so they get all three recovery types, and that's why it works so good with this build. Lunar Blessing, increasing your max health, magic, and stamina by 9, 15. And then you get Feline Ambush, increasing your critical damage and critical healing by 12%. Decreases your detection radius by and stealth by 3. And you know, I just realized I made a mistake. The build does reach 120 something percent crit damage, critical damage easily, like all the time, because I keep forgetting this is 12%, not 10%. So it's actually a lot more than that when you look at other factors of crit damage. Like you can get crit damage from CP, you can get crit damage from skills and things like that. So all these things play into that, but you're going to have a maxed out crit damage all the time. And it makes it really good for this build to have that maximum 125% critical damage all the time. So, alright, now that I've shown you the skills, now let's look at these champion points. And we're going to look at the champion points that are slotted, not the ones that we have unlocked. It would take too much time to do all those, so let's take a look at these. So, Rationer, really good, adds 10 minutes to your food per stage. We have 30, so it's 30 minutes. This one, whenever you use a potion, you have a 10% chance not to consume it. That's a major benefit when playing dungeons or even overland. Steed's Blessing increases your out-of-combat movement speed by 4% per stage. That's plus 20%. And then you have Professional Upkeep, which reduces the cost of repairing your armor by 1% per stage with a 50% cost reduction. Moving on to the blue tree, or the Warfare tree, we have Reaving Blows. Whenever you deal direct damage, you heal for 7% of the damage done. This is why this build is so insane with like survivability. Its self-healing is incredible. And then Duelist Rebuff reduces the damage taken by single target attacks by 2% per stage, so you get that extra 10% damage. You get Enduring Resolve, reduces damage taken by damage over time effects by 2% per stage. I think I have this set up for more of a tanky setup, but if you wanted to, it's really simple. You just change that out to the more direct DPS type. Really? So that one goes there. Let's take these two out. Since they're not locking in. Alright. And we will go ahead and confirm that. So, damage-wise, Deadly Aim, Thaumaturge, and Mastered Arms. This is just going to make your overall damage capabilities more effective. When it comes to the red tree, Soothing Shield is a weird one to have, I know, but it really does help. Bloody Renewal, this one gives you stamina back whenever you kill an enemy. Fortified increases your armor, again higher resistance, and then Rejuvenation gives you the recovery, the higher recovery rate and ranges. All these right here aren't to make you tanky; they're to make you help you survive while you're playing. If you need to block an attack, every time you block, you have a 15% chance to restore 735 health. That's actually a pretty big chance, and it's going to happen more often than none. Where you're going to be blocking an attack, you're going to heal yourself. That's going to be beneficial. And remember, whenever you have Green Dragon's Blood going, you get 8% healing received. So, alright, so that is pretty much it for the CP, the gear, the traits, and everything else. I am going to show you what this build looks like with group-based stats, but before I do that, I want to show you what the rotation is. So the rotation on this build is really quite simple. You're going to start on the back bar. You're going to cast Flames of Oblivion first, Green Dragon Blood second, and then you're going to Poison Injection, Endless, or Arrow Barrage, Eruption, the Talons. Then you're going to Light Attack. You're going to Light Attack between all this. Spin to win, Light Attack, Noxious Breath, spin to win, or sorry, that, and then spin to win. You're going to do one, and then you're going to heavy attack. The reason for the heavy attack is for the resources and the fact that you actually gain a few seconds where you can throw that heavy attack in, which is going to keep your stamina coming in. So that's the way the rotation works. Again, rotation is Flames of Oblivion, Light Attack, Endless or Green Dragon's Blood, Light Attack, Poison injection, light attack, and arrow barrage, light attack, eruption, light attack, front bar, light attack, claws, light attack, spin to wind, light attack, noxious breath, light attack, blade cloak, light attack, spin to win, and then into a heavy attack, and then swap bars and do the whole rotation over again. And you're going to do that consistently. And the reason for that, it's going to make your damage output that much better. Now, if you are using a potion while you're doing dungeons and you're not wanting all 3 resources, you can use the warrior power pots. And I'm going to show you now what the stats will look like if you're playing in an organized group. So, stat-wise, you can see you go to 30k health, 31k stamina, 22k magicka, really good recovery rates without a potion, decent weapon and spell damage. But if you have a potion going, your weapon damage goes to 5,047, and that's not even fully buffed. Again, this is not fully 100% buffed. The Atronach doesn't give you major and minor courage, so when you add those in as well, you actually get a much higher weapon spell damage across the board, along with really good recoveries, as you can see. This just makes the build that much more functional and optimized for group play, as well as in overland play, solo play, whatever you're doing, even PvP. It's a very well-rounded, powerful build, and it's meant to be. It's meant to be super survivable, super high DPS, all that stuff, on purpose. So you have that greater survivability, you have that tankiness, you have that damage intake with that damage output. So it just plays upon itself. And you can also swap out Green Dragon's Blood for Hardened Armor if you want, for that just greater resistance or survivability, and it makes you a lot more tankier, but you're going to lose a lot of healing effect and all this stuff, so there's a lot of things that play into that. And that's pretty much it. Also, if you even with any build I will tell you this, they all use light, medium, and heavy in them. So you can gain all the armor benefits, but you also gain the Undaunted passive, Undaunted Metal, and the 6% to each of your stats. It also gives you greater Undaunted command, so you get more resources back when you activate a synergy. So all these things that you see with my builds, they're all going to share a lot of similarities. A lot of them are going to use the same mix of armor, the same enchants, traits, things like that fit the design of the build more efficiently and allow them to be more effective, more well-rounded, so they're not just restricted to one role. They can play a lot of different roles. And that's pretty much it for the build. I mean, there's a lot of things that go in that this build can do. It's not just restricted to damage dealing, as you can see. It's got really good survivability already. It plays a great tank. It plays a good healer. Not a great healer, but a good healer. And you can use other skills to get other heals, like Energy Orb's a great heal, but it's not a good burst heal, and this build really doesn't have a high burst heal, except for the Psijic Order ability, in Spirit, and that's only because you can do a massive heal over time, so that's where it really shines. Other than that, like healing wise, it's a good healer. It's not a great healer. It's good for like normal dungeons, normal arenas, normal trials, but it's not something you'd want to heal a veteran content with, unless it's like base game, and then even that you'd be struggling a little bit, but not too much. Overall, great build, really fun to play, really unique and different from other things. And I've been asked, and I'm going to answer that, but not in this video. I'm going to answer it in another video I'll be releasing later today about builds that are coming, what kind of things I'm working on, that kind of stuff. And yeah, we'll get to that in that video. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time. Oh, wait, I left out the best part. So if you guys like the video, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. If you do subscribe, I do suggest you click that notification bell. Other than that, thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.